RWBY, Volume 4, Episode 10, Kuroyuri. What happens? The episode begins with Oscar leaving his home, but he was dumb and didn't check the weather first, so it starts to rain on him. He doesn't end up having enough money to get a train ticket, but obtains one after a small interaction with Hazel. We then cut to the destroyed Kuroyuri, where Jean and RWBY chat for a moment before we get transitioned into a flashback. A young Ren then talks with his mother and proceeds to a shopping district where he runs across Nora and a gaggle of bullies. Ren fails to save her, but his father, Lee, scares the kids away. Lee leaves his son with some advice as we transition back to the present with Jean and RWBY. The two talk about courage and friendship for a bit, and then we cut back to the past. Young Ren is woken up by the sound of a grim that soon kills his mother. Lee tries to escape with Ren despite his injuries, but is unable to make it. Leaving his son with a dagger and some final words, Ren runs as Lee makes a last stand against the beast. With his family dead, the town in ruins, and the Nukkalavi coming closer, Ren discovers that his semblance is to enter an emotionless state and effectively hide from the grim in plain sight. Ren protects and befriends Nora. We follow the two back to the present, where they find a cave that ends up being the empty lair of the Nukkalavi. The two hold hands with the realization that their past has finally caught up to them. Okay, it may just be me, but I am so tired of hearing Oscar say the word crazy. It's like his favorite thing to say. I'm not crazy! Everything you've told me is crazy! Crazy, 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 crazy! Your limited vocabulary is driving me crazy! This rain effect is beautiful, and the lightning looks so good that I tend to forget it's not actually thundering outside when I watch it. It's also a really nice touch that Oscar and Hazel's shoulders are all wet. It's an effect I feel they wouldn't have done if it had rained like this in previous volumes. Hazel is striking. He just commands your attention, and William Orendorff's performance is a big factor in that. I also love that, despite the fact that he's a huge dude, he's accompanied by the sound of wind chimes. It really gives him an eerie presence, as if he's got a secret being held close to his chest. A lot of fans seem to think Hazel's going to be a turncoat and join the good guys, but I don't think so. Ozpin's clearly worried when he shows up. I can feel the potential for Hazel to be terrifying lying beneath the surface, and I can't wait for RT to show us why it is he's a villain. So, honestly, Kuroyuri doesn't look that bad. I mean, like, it's in ruins and it looks bad, but it doesn't look any worse than Shion, and the color palette is all too similar to Oniyuri. Jean and RWBY react as if it's the worst destruction they've ever seen, but since the RWBY crew decided to make every serious scene Rangers in have this same gloomy atmosphere, it just doesn't stand out from the other crummy cities they've encountered. The one doing all the work to really sell the decrepit atmosphere of Kuroyuri is the music. This whole episode's soundtrack is amazing, and does a great job setting the mood. Little Ren is so dang cute! Oh! Okay, gotta focus. Afia Yu does- I tried to look up how to pronounce her name. I have no idea. Afia Yu does a great job sounding like a little kid. Her cadences are just spot on. However, she makes Ren sound a little British? I don't know what it is, but her accent just comes off as more British than Japanese. It's interesting to think how Ren's life would have been different if the Nukkalavi hadn't attacked Kuroyuri. Ren would almost definitely have become a florist if his life hadn't been uprooted like it does. Ren's shopping adventure makes my heart hurt with how cute it is.
Sake, please.
Nora's past may still be a mystery, but we're still given enough information to supplement Ren's story, which is our focus. I'm excited to learn about Nora's parents and how she ended up in Kuroyuri, but I'm glad that the script was focused on Ren for this. No need to distract the audience from Ren's past with Nora's. I may want to know about Nora's past, but for this story and its pacing, leaving it out was the right idea. When I first saw this episode, I expected Ren to run in and save the day, or at least try. The fact that he starts to run away was not only surprising, but way more interesting. He's not a hero. He didn't grow up wanting to save the world. He's a scared little boy who became a huntsman not because he wanted to, but because he had to. His panicking at the bullies offers a ton of depth and interest to the character, and does a lot to tell us about Ren as he is now. The inspirational advice given in RWBY tends to be pretty trite or uninspired, but Lee's words to Ren are not only important to the development of Ren's character, but aren't nearly as contrived as other important advice scenes this volume. Tai's constantly spouting advice to Yang, but it never resonates the same way Lee's advice does. This may be as simple as Lee just has better advice to give, or the fact that Kaiji Tang's performance may be the best of this volume. As a small aside, something I saw frequently in the comment sections when these episodes were first coming out was this idea that RT was killing off Crow because they couldn't afford Vic Mignogna anymore. I guess something these people didn't think about was, if RT was short on cash for the voice actors, then they wouldn't have been coughing up the dough to have actors like Kaiji Tang, Shirami Lei, Mike McFarlane, and Derek Mears show up for just one episode. So, this episode actually has establishing shots and transitions that ease the viewer into the next scene. So why are these missing from so many other episodes this volume? More often than not, we just cut between characters. Sometimes we cut into the middle of an action. This results in Kuroyuri feeling better planned out and ultimately makes for a more satisfying episode. I would say that the RWBY crew needs to make sure they at least know the basics to visual storytelling before they work on Volume 5, but this episode proves that they already do and simply choose to go the lazy route and just jump from scene to scene willy-nilly. If this episode's gonna be on this level of quality, why can't all the rest of them be, you know? I really like this conversation between RWBY and Jean. It's the closest we get to seeing RWBY develop at all of this volume, and for once Jean's taking the back seat to let another character have the spotlight. It gives us some cool insight on why Jean and the others joined RWBY, and shows us that while RWBY's the better fighter, Jean's the better speaker, which gives them an interesting dynamic between the two different types of leaders. My only real problem is that it sort of feels like we interrupt Ren's story for this to take place. It took 4 volumes for us to get any kind of information on Ren, and yet we still take some time away from that to focus on the forgotten protagonist of the show. It's not a huge problem, and doesn't ruin the episode in any way. I just feel like it would have been better if the scene was in episode 11. Oh, don't mind me, just sleeping fully dressed with my shoes on. This is some real-ass fear during Lee and Ann's conversation. No matter how many times I watch it, it leaves me on the edge of my seat. And Ann's death! Shit, dude! They didn't pull any punches with that! Pyrrha's death was so disturbing. Fuck that, Pyrrha was nothing compared to this episode! Okay, so, when Lee's carrying Ren, it's just not convincing. Especially when Ren leans back. Lee just shouldn't be able to keep a hold on him without Ren being more over his shoulder. But whatever, this scene is great. Kaiji Tang and Afia Yu's performances are just amazing. The script is believable, the music swells at all the right places, the character model performances sell the emotions perfectly. This is by far the best done scene in all of RWBY so far, not just this volume. Like, 1,000,000 out of 10, across the board. Oh man, the Nukkalavi. Seeing it loom closer like that does so many things right. First, it's scary as fuck like that. Second, it continues the build-up from the footprints we've seen and leads into the finale beautifully. Third, the fact that Ren can see that coming closer but not his dad tells him and the audience exactly what happened to Lee. Shit, dude, that's some good storytelling! So Ren's semblance wasn't super clear. It can come across as it just gives him courage. You need to bank on the idea that the viewer remembers that Grimm feed on emotion in general, and even then, it could still confuse some viewers. We all figured it out eventually, but not without some confusion first. While I usually commend RWBY for its lack of unnecessary hand-holding, this is one time where a little more help from the script would have been nice. Damn, that's a cool shot. I have nothing else to say about that, it's just really cool. Fuck, this rendition of Boop gets me so hard in the feels. Oh. Unfortunately, the effect is lost on someone who doesn't listen to the soundtracks, and yes, not everyone does. Which means more casual viewers won't get the full emotion offered from the scene. I mean, it's still a good scene, but the music is a big player in it. Establishing themes beforehand for maximum viewer emotions may be something RT should try to work on for the future. Puberty hit Ren like a train. It's real nice to get to see Ren and Nora interact with just each other. The only other time we've seen this was in their introduction in Volume 1. Every other time, Jean, RWBY, or Pyrrha have not only been there too, but were also the focus. These two have the deepest and most believable friendship in the show. It'd be nice if we got to see it more often. Ren and Nora's discovery of Shion's flag left me confused on a first watch. Nora says it's weeks away, so I thought they were trying to establish that the kids were still much closer to Shion than they had thought, and had gone in a circle. The real reason for this discovery was to demonstrate that this was the lair of the Grimm who had destroyed Shion, which had been hinted at being the Nukkalavi. Nora's line is the only thing that had left me confused, and sort of feels like it was added in to help piece together the timeline for how the volume works. The RWBY crew tries to tie together all these different stories this volume by making sure they all did something that includes a couple of weeks, like how Yang put her armor on weeks ago. These little throwaway lines do next to nothing to make sense of the convoluted timeline of the volume, but that's something we'll talk about when it becomes a bigger problem. No Grimm has ever felt as threatening as the Nukkalavi. Even ignoring its destruction of Kurayuri, this cave establishes that a good amount of warriors have died trying to kill this thing. It's the biggest threat the kids have ever faced, and the team is also stuck with an injured crow to protect. Certainly, defeating such a monstrosity wouldn't be a simple task for 4 teenagers who haven't even finished their first year of high school. Right? Perfect establishment! Seeing that all too well-known footprint leading out with the trees showing us that the Nukkalavi's on the move, 11 out of 10 cinematography. All I wanted in life was for Ren and Nora to hold hands here. And they did. And so, that's Kurayuri. This is hands down my favorite episode this volume. Everything's been done well, from the cinematography, to the music, to the performances, to the editing. It's just a good time and fun to watch. There are a good couple of nitpicks I chose not to bring up because they didn't feel important enough given the scope of the episode. Things like how Rooster Teeth seem to think children have flat shovel faces, and how Ren's run cycle here isn't very convincing. Because when the overall story and episode is really good, the viewer is more likely to forgive or ignore small things like that. If it's a boring or preachy episode like Menagerie, then the viewer starts to look for these minor problems, so they can have more to complain about. If you want the audience to give you some more leeway, then you need to provide content of a certain quality. Kurayuri's biggest strength is the structure of the story being told. It feels thought out and paced well. We never feel rushed or like we're lollygagging. Time and effort has clearly been put into this episode's script, and it pays off. Compare this to 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. That episode feels disjointed and confused, with 4 tonally different stories being strung together with nothing to connect them thematically. The scenes are good individually, but when you put them together like they are, it feels unfocused, and like no progress is getting made for the characters. Episode 9's not the only one to suffer from the stitched-together pacing. Tipping Point, Punished, A Much Needed Talk, and Taking Control all have this disconnected, sloppy feel to them. RT's shown that they can excel when they focus on one story with Kurayuri, but that doesn't stop most of the volume from feeling haphazardly stuck together. If Kurayuri's the quality we can expect from the RWBY crew when they focus on a story, then I hope the gang get back together soon, since RT clearly doesn't understand how to write multiple stories going on at the same time. It is a difficult task to tell 5 different character arcs over the course of 12 episodes, but if RT wasn't up to the task, then I wish they had let themselves focus on only a fraction of the characters we did this volume. I would have rather we spent more time on each individual story over a longer amount of time, rather than getting the footnotes of them all in such a short amount of time. At least within the sea of disconnected cliffhangers that make up Volume 4, we have Kurayuri. An episode with the tightest script in RWBY so far, and a level of effort I can only hope we get to see more of in the future.